Have you ever wondered if a single man, hidden behind the walls of the Vatican, could command the destiny of empires and the souls of kings? They called him the Black Pope, a name whispered with dread across Europe's grandest halls and darkest alleys. For centuries, stories of his invisible hand have haunted monarchs, terrified ministers, and ignited the imagination of anyone who dared to question who truly ruled the world. But was he ever real? Or was he a phantom born of fear, suspicion, and the chaos of a continent at war with itself? Picture the ancient cathedrals of Rome, their stones soaked with the prayers and secrets of countless generations. Candles flicker along shadowed aisles, their light dancing across faces carved by time. Beneath those vaults, in chambers few have ever seen, legend claims that a man dressed in black robes held power surpassing the white-robed Pope himself. His orders were said to cross borders faster than any army, his words able to crown or topple kings, and his knowledge of Europe's secrets so complete that no one could escape his reach. Tonight we begin an extraordinary journey to unravel the truth behind this legend. Was the Black Pope truly the shadow emperor of Europe, the mastermind of secret councils and plots, or merely the invention of terrified minds desperate to make sense of wars, revolutions, and betrayals? As we peel back layers of myth and sift through centuries of conflicting accounts, we will explore not only the man at the center of these stories, but also the forces that made him a symbol of ultimate, hidden power. Welcome to KTK History, where we do not just tell stories from the past, but guide you through the darkest corridors of history, shining light on the forgotten corners and unmasking the shadows that still linger today. Here, we invite you to question what you thought you knew, to challenge the comforting certainties of official narratives, and to journey with us into mysteries that shape the world we live in. In this documentary, you will discover the birth of the Black Pope legend in the turbulent days of the Reformation, follow the Society of Jesus as it rose to global prominence, and confront the evidence, both real and fabricated, that kept this myth alive through centuries of suspicion and intrigue. We will meet historians who have devoted their lives to separating fact from fear and explore how the echoes of this legend still influence conspiracy theories today. Prepare yourself for a tale where faith meets fear, power dances with paranoia, and the line between truth and legend is thinner than a candle's flame in the midnight halls of Rome. The story of the Black Pope awaits, and what you find may forever change the way you see the history of Europe, the Church, and the secret forces said to move them both. To understand the legend of the Black Pope, we must journey back to an age when Europe was ablaze with religious wars, political intrigues, and social upheaval. The 16th century was a time of fierce conflict, a moment when old certainties shattered and a new world struggled to emerge from the ashes of the medieval order. At the heart of this transformation stood the Reformation, a movement that split Western Christianity into rival camps and unleashed a storm of change that would sweep across the continent for generations to come. The Protestant Reformation began as a call for reform within the Catholic Church, but it quickly spiraled into a revolution that challenged the very foundations of European society. Princes, kings, and emperors took sides, aligning with Protestant or Catholic factions, not only out of faith but also out of political necessity. Entire regions of Europe became battlegrounds where armies clashed, families were torn apart, and cities were burned to the ground in the name of religion. As the Protestant cause spread, the Catholic Church recognized the need for a response. Out of this urgency came the Counter-Reformation, a sweeping effort to reaffirm Catholic doctrine, renew spiritual discipline, and reclaim souls lost to Protestant teaching. But the Church needed more than councils and decrees. It needed an army of men who could match the fervor of the Protestant reformers, outthink their arguments, and bring the message of the Catholic faith to lands near and far. This army arrived in the form of the Society of Jesus, also known as the Jesuits. Founded in 1540 by Ignatius of Loyola, a Basque soldier-turned-mystic, the Jesuits quickly became one of the most dynamic and controversial forces in the Catholic world. They vowed absolute obedience to the Pope, embraced a life of poverty and chastity, and committed themselves to spreading the faith through teaching, preaching, and missionary work. The Jesuits were unlike any order Europe had seen before. They were fiercely educated, trained in rhetoric, philosophy, and languages. They traveled to the ends of the earth, from the courts of Chinese emperors to the jungles of South America, seeking to convert, to learn, and to bring the Catholic faith to every corner of the world. Their courage and discipline inspired admiration among many, but they also inspired fear. At the center of this new order stood the superior general, a leader chosen by the Jesuits themselves, who held absolute authority within the society. This man answered only to the Pope and wielded immense influence over thousands of Jesuits spread across continents. His role was to guide the order, direct missions, and maintain the rigorous discipline that made the Jesuits so effective. He was addressed simply as Father General, but in time, his power and black robes gave rise to a more ominous name whispered among the fearful: the Black Pope. The first seeds of the legend were sown in the decades following the founding of the Jesuits. Their rapid rise to prominence, their independence from local bishops, and their unwavering loyalty to the Pope made them both invaluable allies and dangerous enemies in the eyes of European rulers. Jesuits served as confessors and advisors to monarchs, wielding spiritual authority over kings and queens. Their counsel could influence royal marriages, military campaigns, and political alliances. For rulers who supported the Jesuits, they were a powerful tool for strengthening Catholic influence. For those who feared or opposed them, they appeared as a network of spies and agents, capable of undermining governments and swaying the loyalties of entire populations. The image of a secret army, answering to a single shadowy leader, captured the imagination of a Europe already primed for suspicion. As religious wars raged across the continent, pamphlets and polemics spread stories of Jesuit plots and hidden schemes. Protestant writers painted the Jesuits as sinister manipulators who lurked behind every throne, using confession to extract secrets and blackmail powerful figures. They claimed the Jesuit general issued orders that could change the course of wars and revolutions, shaping the destiny of Europe from the shadows. One of the earliest documents to feed the legend was the Monita Secreta, or Secret Instructions, a text purportedly written by Jesuit leaders outlining strategies for gaining power over rulers and accumulating wealth for the order. Though it was quickly exposed as a forgery created by enemies of the Jesuits, the Monita Secreta became one of the most powerful weapons in the arsenal of anti-Jesuit propaganda. It was printed and reprinted across Europe, each copy fueling the belief that a dark conspiracy guided by the Black Pope was working tirelessly to dominate the world. The fear of the Jesuits was not confined to Protestant lands. Even in Catholic countries, the society's influence sometimes provoked jealousy and resentment among other clergy and secular leaders. Jesuit schools attracted the brightest minds, their missions accumulated wealth through donations, and their members moved freely across borders at a time when most people never left their home villages. The superior general's authority over this vast network seemed both extraordinary and frightening. As the legend grew, real events intertwined with rumor to create a narrative that was impossible to separate from fact. When Henry IV of France was assassinated by a Catholic zealot in 1610, many Protestants accused the Jesuits of inspiring the killer, despite a lack of evidence. When the gunpowder plot threatened to blow up the English Parliament in 1605, the presence of Jesuit priests among the conspirators led to wild accusations that the Black Pope himself had orchestrated the plan. The legend crossed oceans with European settlers. In the Americas, stories spread of Jesuit missions that ruled over vast territories, establishing reductions where they trained and governed indigenous populations. To colonial administrators and merchants who resented Jesuit protection of native peoples, these missions looked like kingdoms within kingdoms, governed by a foreign power loyal to Rome alone. Reports of Jesuits teaching advanced farming techniques, building defenses, and maintaining strict order fueled suspicions that they were preparing secret armies under the direction of the Black Pope. Art and literature also played their part in cementing the myth. Engravings depicted the Jesuit general holding puppet strings attached to crowns and mitres, suggesting he controlled both kings and bishops. Plays and novels portrayed Jesuits as cunning villains, masters of disguise who could infiltrate any court or council. Over time, the Black Pope became a stock character in European imagination, a symbol of unseen power lurking behind every major event. Political leaders found the legend useful as well. When conflicts arose between monarchs and the Church, blaming the Jesuits allowed rulers to rally public support and justify harsh measures. Expulsions of the Jesuits from countries like France, Portugal, and Spain were often accompanied by dramatic declarations that the Black Pope's plots had been foiled, even when little evidence supported such claims. Each new expulsion added another layer to the myth, convincing people that if so many kings found it necessary to banish the society, the danger must be real. The 18th century brought the legend to new heights. As Enlightenment thinkers challenged the authority of the Church, they portrayed the Jesuits as the last defenders of superstition, loyal to a secret leader determined to keep Europe chained to the past. Writers like Voltaire and Diderot criticized the society not only for its religious conservatism, but also for its alleged conspiracies, painting the Black Pope as the embodiment of everything regressive and oppressive. When the Society of Jesus was suppressed by Pope Clement XIV in 1773, enemies of the Jesuits celebrated what they saw as the end of a dark chapter. Yet the very need to suppress the order gave fresh life to the myth. How could an organization so dangerous that it required papal intervention simply vanish? Conspiracy theorists imagine the Jesuits going underground, continuing their work in secret, guided by the immortal hand of the Black Pope. Even after the Jesuits were restored in 1814 by Pope Pius VII, the legend refused to die. The 19th century saw waves of revolutions, wars, and social changes that left people searching for explanations. Each time a pope made an unpopular decision or a Catholic country experienced unrest, fingers pointed back to the Jesuits and their supposed leader. Newspapers published sensational stories of secret Jesuit councils, hidden vaults, and black-robed priests moving in the night, all under the orders of the Black Pope. As the 20th century began, new forms of media spread the legend further than ever before. Radio broadcasts, films, and pulp novels reused the image of the Black Pope to sell stories of intrigue and danger. In the modern age of conspiracy theories, the Black Pope found new life, woven into narratives about world governments, secret societies, and plots that reached far beyond Europe. Yet through it all, the reality of the superior general's role remained largely unchanged. He led a religious order devoted to education, missions, and spiritual service, focused more on the challenges of running schools, protecting missionaries, and guiding priests than on world domination. But once born, the legend of the Black Pope took on a life of its own, surviving wars, reforms, and the changing tides of history. In understanding these origins, we begin to see how the myth was shaped by the fears and hopes of a continent in turmoil, and how it has persisted as a symbol of hidden power long after the facts faded into the shadows. The story of the Black Pope endures because it is woven from fragments of truth, layers of fear, and a hunger for simple answers in a complex world. While the origins of the legend can be traced to the early days of the Jesuit Order and the anxieties of Europe during the Reformation, it is the evidence people believed they saw and the interpretations they gave it that allowed the myth to grow and survive across centuries. This evidence came in many forms: letters and documents, confessions and rumors, events twisted by suspicion, and stories retold until they hardened into certainty. One of the most powerful elements sustaining belief in the Black Pope was the undeniable reach of the Jesuits themselves. By the end of the 16th century, Jesuit missions and schools had spread to every corner of Europe, and soon after to Asia, Africa, and the Americas. Their letters, called annual letters, flowed back to Rome with detailed reports of their activities. These letters, written in precise, elegant Latin, described not only the successes of their missions, but also the political, cultural, and spiritual landscapes they encountered. To many, the idea of a single man in Rome reading these letters and issuing instructions gave the impression of a global intelligence network far more sophisticated than any royal court could hope to match. The role of Jesuit confessors further fueled these suspicions. Jesuit priests served as spiritual advisors to kings, queens, princes, and powerful nobles. In an age when confession was taken seriously and when secrets could mean life or death, the thought of these private revelations being shared with the superior general was both plausible and terrifying. Although the seal of confession was considered inviolable by the Church, fear lingered that a Jesuit confessor could report political plots, alliances, or weaknesses to his superiors, who might use this information to manipulate outcomes across Europe. Contemporary letters between monarchs and their ministers showed just how real these fears were. In Spain, a royal advisor warned his king that Jesuit confessors might extract state secrets from courtiers. In France, rumors swirled that the Jesuits had used their influence over the Queen's confessor to sway her opinions on alliances and treaties. In England, Protestant ministers wrote panicked reports claiming that Jesuit agents had infiltrated the court, advising Catholics in high positions to betray their country in favor of Rome. Events like the Gunpowder Plot of 1605 seemed to confirm these fears. When English authorities discovered the plan to blow up Parliament and kill King James I, they found Catholic conspirators, some with connections to Jesuit priests. Although direct involvement of the Jesuit leadership was never proven, the mere presence of Jesuits near the conspirators was enough to convince many that the Black Pope himself must have ordered the attack. Sermons, pamphlets, and plays spread this idea throughout England, reinforcing the link between Jesuits and dark plots. In France, the assassination of King Henry IV by a Catholic zealot in 1610 offered another opportunity for the legend to grow. Protestant enemies of the Jesuits quickly claimed that the society had inspired the killer, even without evidence. Public suspicion was so strong that Jesuits were expelled from France for a time, and their schools and churches were closed. Each event like this, whether tied to Jesuit involvement or not, added fuel to the fire of belief, convincing the fearful that a single hand guided every Catholic plot. The Monita Secreta played an outsized role in strengthening the myth. This document, whose full title translates to Secret Instructions of the Jesuits, first appeared in Poland in the early 17th century. It claimed to reveal the hidden strategies of the Jesuits, advising them to ingratiate themselves with the rich and powerful, to gather intelligence through confession, and to use cunning to advance their influence. Though historians quickly showed that it was a forgery created by anti-Jesuit factions, its impact was devastating. Protestants and secular rulers throughout Europe accepted it as proof that the Black Pope controlled a secret plan to dominate the world, and copies were printed and reprinted for generations. Beyond Europe, reports from Jesuit missions in Asia and the Americas also fueled suspicions. Jesuit missionaries often established settlements known as reductions, especially in South America. In these reductions, Jesuits taught local people new skills, introduced Christianity, and organized communal life according to European models. Colonial authorities and rival orders accused Jesuits of creating independent states loyal only to Rome, with some reports describing Jesuit-led armies defending these communities. While in reality many reductions protected indigenous people from exploitation, enemies of the society portrayed them as training grounds for private militias serving the Black Pope's ambitions. Art and literature magnified these fears. Engravings showed Jesuit priests handing swords to kings or whispering into the ears of cardinals, their dark robes blending with shadows. Plays and novels painted the Black Pope as a villain who appeared whenever empires teetered on the brink. These stories traveled far and wide, reaching even the illiterate through public readings or performances. As the myth grew, people came to see Jesuit influence in every royal marriage, every treaty, every outbreak of war. Political leaders were quick to exploit this myth for their own ends. When Jesuits clashed with secular authorities over issues of conscience or justice, rulers accused them of treason or conspiracy. Expulsions became a convenient way to eliminate a powerful, independent voice within the realm. Each time the Jesuits were forced out of a country, proclamations described how the Black Pope's sinister plans had been discovered and thwarted, reinforcing the idea that a hidden power had been defeated. Even when the Society of Jesus was suppressed in 1773, the legend lived on. Kings who had demanded the suppression declared victory over the Black Pope, claiming they had broken his grip on Europe. Yet many people believed the Jesuits continued to operate in secret, maintaining their networks and waiting for the right moment to reclaim their influence. The fact that the Jesuits re-emerged after their restoration in 1814 only convinced conspiracy theorists that the Black Pope had never truly lost control. In the 19th century, the rise of mass media expanded the reach of these stories. Newspapers published articles warning of Jesuit conspiracies behind every major event. Authors of political tracts blamed the Black Pope for revolutions, wars, and assassinations. Anti-Catholic activists in England and America used the myth to rally opposition to Catholic emancipation, arguing that granting rights to Catholics would open the door to Jesuit domination. The development of new communication technologies like the telegraph and later the radio allowed rumors to spread faster than ever before. Sensational headlines claimed that the Black Pope had agents in every capital, gathering secrets and bribing officials. When unexpected events shook the world, from revolts to financial panics, it became common for commentators to suggest Jesuit involvement, even when no evidence existed. Some people pointed to circumstantial connections to bolster their fears. If a Jesuit taught a prince who later became a tyrant, it was seen as proof that the Black Pope had shaped his mind. If a Jesuit missionary recorded observations of foreign lands, it was claimed these reports were not for spreading faith, but for plotting conquest. If a Jesuit school educated a successful general, it was rumored that his victories were orchestrated from Rome. The enduring power of the legend also came from its adaptability. Each generation found new reasons to believe. In the era of revolutions, the Black Pope was blamed for stirring monarchists against republics. During times of social upheaval, he was accused of funding radicals to destabilize governments. When nationalist movements rose, both sides claimed Jesuits supported their enemies. The Black Pope became a blank canvas onto which any fear of hidden power could be painted. Cultural fears of Catholicism itself reinforced belief in the Black Pope, especially in Protestant-majority countries. Anti-Catholic sentiments merged with xenophobia and class tensions, turning the Jesuit general into a symbol of foreign interference and social control. Pamphlets and cartoons depicted him looming over Protestant churches, pulling strings that made clergymen dance like puppets. Even serious historians of the 18th and 19th centuries sometimes fell prey to these biases, repeating stories without verifying their sources. Academic works would cite rumors as facts, giving the legend a veneer of credibility that kept it alive in educated circles. Once printed in respected books, these stories were repeated in newspapers and taught in schools, spreading belief among people who might never have encountered Jesuits directly. The 20th century brought world wars, revolutions, and new waves of conspiracy theories. As empires fell and ideologies clashed, people sought simple explanations for the chaos. The Black Pope legend fit neatly into these needs. He could be blamed for manipulating both sides in a conflict, for pushing nations to war, or for engineering peace on terms that benefited only the Church. Each new crisis refreshed the myth, keeping it relevant despite the lack of concrete evidence. In modern times, the Internet has carried the legend further than any printing press could have dreamed. Websites devoted to conspiracies weave the Black Pope into stories involving Freemasons, Illuminati, or secret cabals said to rule the world. Videos claiming to expose the Black Pope's influence garner millions of views, while forums debate whether events like financial crises or political scandals bear his hidden mark. These beliefs often ignore the realities of the Jesuit Order's actual mission: education, service, and spiritual care. Yet they continue to thrive because the idea of an invisible master controlling the fate of nations is both terrifying and irresistible. In a world growing ever more complex, the Black Pope legend offers a simple story of cause and effect, hero and villain, order and chaos. For every rumor of secret armies and dark conspiracies directed by a Black Pope, there have been scholars, clergy, and historians who have dedicated themselves to examining the facts behind the legend. Their work paints a picture of a society of Jesus vastly different from the sinister force imagined by its critics. Instead of an omnipotent network devoted to world domination, they find an order deeply committed to education, spiritual guidance, and service to humanity. The counter-arguments they present are built on evidence that challenges the myth at its core. One of the most important points made by historians is that the title of Superior General does not grant its holder political or military power over nations or even over the Catholic Church as a whole. The Superior General leads only the internal affairs of the Jesuit Order. He does not have authority to command bishops, dictate papal policy, or direct governments. His decisions affect the operations of Jesuit schools, missions, and houses, but they do not extend beyond the members of the society itself. This distinction is crucial, as it shows that while the Superior General is influential within his own order, he lacks the power to control kings or popes. Another key argument lies in the very structure of the Catholic Church. Unlike a monarchy with a single line of authority, the Church is made up of thousands of dioceses, each led by a bishop who answers directly to the Pope. Jesuits operate within this system, but do not oversee it. While the Jesuits' independence from local bishops was granted so they could move quickly and serve where needed, it does not mean they replace or outrank other clergy. The myth of a Black Pope ruling the Church in secret ignores the complexity of church governance and the limitations on Jesuit authority. The seal of confession, often cited in stories of Jesuits gathering secrets, also undermines the legend when examined carefully. According to Catholic doctrine, priests are strictly forbidden from revealing anything they hear in confession under penalty of excommunication. Jesuit priests, bound by this law, cannot legally or morally report confessional material to their superiors. Historical investigations have found no credible evidence of widespread breaches of this seal by Jesuits. Though fears of confession being misused have persisted, they are unsupported by documented cases. Scholars also note that the Monita Secreta, a text frequently used to support the myth of the Black Pope, was conclusively shown to be a forgery. Modern analysis of its language, references, and context indicates it was created by enemies of the Jesuits seeking to discredit them during periods of intense religious conflict. Its instructions do not match Jesuit constitutions or documented practices. Despite this, copies of the Monita continued to circulate long after its exposure as a hoax, fueling suspicions that had no basis in reality. In examining historical events tied to the myth, researchers have uncovered alternative explanations that do not require a secret mastermind. For example, while some Jesuits were implicated in the gunpowder plot, evidence suggests they acted independently or were falsely accused. The English government of the time had strong incentives to portray Catholic priests as villains to justify harsh anti-Catholic laws. Similarly, in the case of Henry IV's assassination, contemporary records show the killer acted alone, motivated by personal fanaticism rather than Jesuit direction. The repeated expulsions of the Jesuits from various countries, often cited as proof of their danger, are better explained by political and economic motives. Monarchs who expelled Jesuits typically seized their properties, schools, and revenues, strengthening royal control over education and reducing the Church's influence. Jesuits' advocacy for the rights of indigenous peoples in colonies also threatened powerful interests. Rather than revealing a conspiracy, these expulsions illustrate how Jesuits became targets when they challenged the status quo. The educational work of the Jesuits stands as a powerful counter-argument against the myth of the Black Pope. From their earliest days, Jesuits established colleges and universities dedicated to rigorous intellectual training. Their schools became centers of science, philosophy, and the humanities, producing influential thinkers and fostering debate. This openness to knowledge contradicts the idea of a secretive order bent on suppressing enlightenment. Many Jesuit scientists, such as Matteo Ricci in China and Christopher Clavius in Europe, advanced understanding in mathematics, astronomy, and cartography. When examining the personal writings of superiors general, historians find reflections on spiritual matters, organizational concerns, and the welfare of missionaries, not blueprints for world domination. Letters between Jesuit leaders and members reveal anxieties over funding, requests for new books for schools, or pleas for medical supplies for missionaries in remote lands. These mundane details stand in stark contrast to the grand conspiracies described in popular imagination. Popes themselves have provided evidence contradicting the myth. Throughout history, several popes have clashed with Jesuits, restricting their activities or demanding changes in leadership. If the Black Pope truly held power over the Vatican, such interventions would not have been possible. In fact, the suppression of the Society of Jesus in 1773, carried out by Pope Clement XIV under pressure from European monarchs, demonstrates that the Pope alone held ultimate authority over the order. The restoration of the Jesuits in 1814 further challenges the myth. After nearly 40 years of suppression, Jesuits returned with papal approval but faced enormous obstacles. Their missions had been dismantled, their schools closed, and many former members had died or joined other communities. Rebuilding the order required cooperation with local bishops and secular governments, not the exercise of secret power. Had they truly controlled events behind the scenes, the restoration would not have been so fraught with difficulty. Modern studies of the Jesuits' activities show a consistent focus on service, education, and social justice. In recent decades, Jesuits have worked in refugee camps, urban slums, and areas devastated by war, often risking their lives to assist the vulnerable. Far from orchestrating conspiracies, they advocate for peace, reconciliation, and the defense of human rights. This mission reflects the spiritual ideals of their founder, Ignatius of Loyola, not a hidden agenda. Scholars also point out that the myth of the Black Pope often reveals more about the societies that believed it than about the Jesuits themselves. In times of upheaval, rumors of shadowy forces offer simple explanations for complex crises. Conspiracies provide targets for anger and fear, channeling uncertainty into a story with clear villains. By blaming the Black Pope, people could avoid confronting the deeper causes of social and political turmoil, such as poverty, inequality, or abuse of power by secular leaders. Cultural and religious biases have also played a significant role in keeping the legend alive. Protestant-majority countries, especially in Northern Europe and later in North America, harbored deep suspicions of Catholicism. The image of a secretive Catholic order, directed by an unseen leader, resonated with fears of foreign influence and religious tyranny. Anti-Catholic literature, sermons, and political campaigns used the myth of the Black Pope to rally support against Catholic rights and immigration, particularly in the 19th century. The myth has persisted partly because it is compelling. Stories of dark figures pulling strings from the shadows captivate audiences, making them far more memorable than sober analyses of historical documents. Novels, movies, and sensational journalism keep the legend alive, even when the evidence says otherwise. Popular culture often prefers narratives of hidden empires and secret wars because they entertain and provoke strong emotions. Despite these challenges, historians continue to work patiently to separate fact from fiction. Their research offers a more nuanced view of the Society of Jesus and its leaders. Jesuits have made mistakes, at times becoming entangled in politics or acting with arrogance. Yet these failings reflect human weaknesses rather than proof of a coordinated plot directed by a Black Pope. Understanding the difference between myth and reality does not diminish the fascinating history of the Jesuits. Instead, it enriches our appreciation for their achievements and struggles. It allows us to see how fear and misunderstanding can distort perceptions, and how legends can grow from kernels of truth into elaborate tales that outlive the people who inspired them. To truly understand the legend of the Black Pope, we must look beyond rumors and confront the documented reality of what the Society of Jesus has done, what its leaders have actually controlled, and how these facts differ from the image of a dark figure pulling the strings of empires. The real story reveals a journey of faith, education, service, and human imperfection rather than a grand conspiracy hidden in the shadows. The Society of Jesus was born not as a secret cabal, but as a response to a crisis of faith. When Ignatius of Loyola founded the order, he envisioned a group of men completely devoted to God, willing to go anywhere and do anything to spread the gospel. His spiritual exercises, a collection of prayers and meditations, shaped a movement rooted in reflection, discernment, and service. The earliest Jesuits were remarkable for their willingness to travel to remote and dangerous places, risking their lives to preach and teach. One of the first missions outside Europe sent Jesuits to India and Japan, where they worked tirelessly to learn local languages, understand unfamiliar customs, and share their faith. Rather than arriving with armies or fleets, they traveled with books and letters of introduction, trying to earn the trust of local leaders. In Japan, Francis Xavier made contact with daimyos, or local warlords, offering education as a way to build friendships. Although his efforts were eventually undone by suspicion of foreign influence, his approach demonstrated a commitment to dialogue rather than force. In China, Matteo Ricci became a model for cultural respect. Rather than imposing European ways, he dressed as a Chinese scholar, learned classical Chinese, and studied Confucian philosophy. He introduced European science and technology, including clocks and maps, which amazed Chinese intellectuals. Ricci's writings show a man devoted to mutual understanding, someone who believed faith and reason could coexist. His approach became the foundation of Jesuit strategy in China, focused on adapting to local cultures. These examples illustrate the difference between myth and reality. The Jesuits' success came not from secret power, but from patience, humility, and hard work. Their method of enculturation, learning from the people they served, was ahead of its time. While some missionaries failed or made mistakes, many left a legacy of respect that challenged the stereotypes of European imperialism. Back in Europe, the Jesuits' influence grew through education. By the 17th century, their colleges were some of the most advanced institutions in the world. They taught subjects ranging from Latin and theology to astronomy and philosophy. Jesuit schools emphasized critical thinking, debate, and intellectual rigor. Students were encouraged to challenge ideas and refine arguments, skills that prepared them for leadership in an increasingly complex world. Records from Jesuit schools show detailed curricula, lesson plans, and notes on students' progress. These documents demonstrate an obsession with education, not with secret control. The superior generals focused much of their correspondence on practical concerns, such as finding qualified teachers, securing funding for scholarships, and maintaining high standards. Letters from generals during the period reveal leaders worried about epidemics that disrupted classes, wars that destroyed schools, and the well-being of both teachers and students. The reality of Jesuit finances also challenges the myth. Although the order received donations and sometimes managed estates, it often struggled to fund its expansive missions and schools. Financial records show debts, unpaid salaries, and desperate appeals for help. Far from amassing secret riches, Jesuits often relied on the generosity of patrons or the income from modest school fees. Their need to raise funds became another reason for suspicion among rulers, who feared money flowing to Rome could be used against them. The real influence of Jesuit confessors, while significant, did not match the dramatic tales of manipulation. Jesuit confessors did counsel kings and queens, but many monarchs consulted multiple advisors, often ignoring or dismissing spiritual guidance when it conflicted with political interests. Diaries and memoirs of rulers who had Jesuit confessors rarely mention secret plots. Instead, they reveal discussions of personal morality, family disputes, or questions of conscience. When monarchs sought advice on state affairs, Jesuit confessors typically urged them to act justly or pursue peace rather than urging war or intrigue. The political involvement of Jesuits sometimes came not from scheming, but from circumstances beyond their control. In Poland, for example, Jesuits were drawn into conflicts because they ran schools that educated both Catholic and Protestant nobles. As religious tensions rose, the mere presence of Jesuits became a flashpoint, even if they did not instigate disputes. In France, Jesuits were sometimes forced to take sides during the wars of religion simply to protect their schools and communities. These situations did not reflect a coordinated plan directed by the Black Pope, but rather the reality of operating in a divided and violent society. During the suppression of the society in the 18th century, the practical limitations of Jesuit power became clear. When Pope Clement XIV dissolved the order, many Jesuits were arrested, expelled, or forced into hiding. Properties were confiscated by governments, often sold to pay debts or fund wars. If the Black Pope truly controlled global affairs, such a suppression would have been impossible. Instead, the swift collapse of Jesuit operations shows how vulnerable they were to political winds. After the restoration of the society in 1814, Jesuits faced a radically changed world. Revolutions, the spread of secular ideas, and new educational movements challenged the Church's authority. Jesuits had to rebuild their schools and missions from scratch, negotiating with suspicious governments and facing competition from public education. Rather than pulling strings from the shadows, they were struggling to regain a place in societies that had changed during their absence. Documents from the 19th and early 20th centuries show superior generals focusing on re-establishing educational networks, expanding missions to new regions, and encouraging scientific research. Jesuit scientists like Angelo Secchi became pioneers in astronomy, developing the first modern classification of stars. Jesuit seismologists built global networks to study earthquakes, providing crucial data that advanced understanding of natural disasters. These achievements were public, celebrated, and far removed from any notion of secret schemes. In the 20th century, Jesuits were often at the forefront of social justice movements. In Latin America, many Jesuits sided with the poor and marginalized during times of dictatorship and civil war. Some were killed for speaking out against violence and inequality. In El Salvador, 6 Jesuit priests were murdered in 1989 by soldiers who saw them as threats to the regime. Far from controlling governments, these Jesuits paid with their lives for challenging oppressive power. The leadership of superior generals in the modern era reflects a shift toward global solidarity and dialogue. Pedro Arrupe, who served as superior general from 1965 to 1983, championed human rights and the option for the poor. He encouraged Jesuits to work in slums, refugee camps, and war zones. His writings focused on compassion, social responsibility, and finding God in the suffering of others. Arrupe's successors have continued this focus, addressing issues like economic injustice, environmental destruction, and interfaith dialogue. The election of Pope Francis in 2013, the first Jesuit pope in history, sparked renewed interest in the Black Pope myth. Conspiracy theorists immediately claimed his rise proved the society had taken control of the Church. Yet Francis's life story contradicts these fears. As a Jesuit in Argentina, he lived simply, rejected privilege, and often clashed with Jesuit superiors when he disagreed with them. His papacy has emphasized humility, mercy, and reform rather than secret agendas. His leadership demonstrates the real character of Jesuit spirituality, a call to serve rather than to dominate. Understanding the true history of the Jesuits also means acknowledging their failures. Like any large organization, the society has made mistakes. Some Jesuits in history became too entangled in politics, abused power, or failed to respect local cultures. These episodes are documented, studied, and condemned by the order itself. Jesuits today continue to examine their past critically, recognizing both the good they have done and the harm they must learn from. The reality behind the Black Pope myth is therefore a story of dedicated individuals striving to educate, serve, and advocate for justice, often in dangerous or hostile environments. It is a story of men who embraced rigorous study, who taught generations of students, who brought scientific knowledge to new lands, and who sometimes paid the ultimate price for standing with the vulnerable. This reality shows how fear and imagination can twist truth into legend. It reminds us that conspiracy theories thrive when people face uncertainty or rapid change. When societies feel threatened, it is easier to believe in hidden masters than to grapple with complex realities. The legend of the Black Pope became a way to make sense of a world torn by religious wars, shifting alliances, and social upheavals. It offered a villain to blame for misfortune, a simple story in a chaotic age. To truly grasp why the legend of the Black Pope has endured for centuries, we must look beyond history books and into the human mind. The power of this myth lies not only in events or documents, but in the deep psychological forces that make conspiracy theories so alluring, especially during times of fear and uncertainty. Examining these forces helps us understand why people across cultures and generations have been drawn to stories of hidden masters, dark plots, and secret rulers. One reason myths like the Black Pope persist is that humans naturally seek simple explanations for complex events. The world is filled with conflicts, economic crises, wars, revolutions, and sudden changes that defy easy understanding. Faced with these challenges, it is comforting to believe there is a secret hand guiding everything, even if that hand is sinister. The idea of a single mastermind, whether the Black Pope or another shadowy figure, provides a clear narrative that reduces chaos to order. Psychologists describe this need as a search for cognitive closure. When people feel threatened or overwhelmed, their brains crave certainty. Conspiracy theories offer that certainty by connecting unrelated events into a single story, creating villains and heroes, and presenting a world where nothing happens by chance. In the case of the Black Pope, the idea that one man could influence kings, popes, and nations gave people a framework to understand wars, assassinations, and social upheaval. Another powerful psychological factor is the human tendency toward in-group and out-group thinking. Throughout history, societies have defined themselves by who they include and who they exclude. Myths of hidden enemies, like the Black Pope, reinforce the sense of an outside threat. For Protestant countries in the 16th and 17th centuries, the Jesuits represented a foreign, mysterious force loyal to Rome. By painting the superior general as a sinister figure, leaders could rally their people around a shared identity and justify actions against perceived outsiders. The Black Pope legend also feeds on confirmation bias. the tendency to seek and remember information that supports existing beliefs while ignoring contradictory evidence. Once people began to suspect the Jesuits of secret plots, every coincidence or rumor became proof. A royal marriage arranged with Jesuit advice could be seen as manipulation. A Jesuit school educating a future general could be blamed for his later decisions. Each detail, however innocent, was woven into a growing web of suspicion. Projection is another factor that keeps myths alive. When rulers or societies act ruthlessly, they often imagine others do the same. In early modern Europe, where betrayal, bribery, and assassination were common tools of politics, it was easy to assume that religious orders must also play by these dark rules. The Black Pope became a mirror reflecting the fears and guilt of powerful people who suspected others of the very schemes they used themselves. Social psychology also shows that stories of hidden enemies help people cope with powerlessness. When communities suffer war, famine, or oppression, it is painful to accept that these disasters happen because of complex or uncontrollable forces. Believing in a secret cabal provides an illusion of control because it suggests that by exposing or defeating the conspirators, peace and stability can return. The Black Pope myth offered this sense of control by promising that understanding his secrets would reveal the key to Europe's troubles. Cultural transmission reinforces these psychological patterns. Legends like the Black Pope are passed down through generations in books, plays, sermons, and now online videos. Each retelling adds new details, adapting the myth to current fears. In times of revolution, he becomes the enemy of liberty. During economic crises, he is blamed for manipulating markets. When wars break out, he is accused of orchestrating both sides. This adaptability allows the legend to survive even when old evidence is discredited. Fear of the unknown plays a crucial role as well. The Jesuits were highly educated, multilingual, and skilled at adapting to foreign cultures. Their knowledge and mobility set them apart from other religious orders. To many, what they did not understand about the Jesuits became frightening. Suspicion thrives in darkness, and the lack of transparency in Jesuit operations, driven by practical needs for security and unity, was interpreted as proof of sinister intent. It is also important to consider how political leaders benefit from myths like the Black Pope. By projecting blame onto a hidden enemy, rulers can distract their people from internal problems. A struggling king might accuse Jesuits of undermining his reign to avoid facing his own failures. A revolutionary leader could claim the Black Pope plotted against freedom to rally support. This political utility ensured that even leaders who did not believe the myth found it convenient to spread. In modern times, the psychology of social media amplifies these ancient patterns. Algorithms favor content that provokes strong emotions, rewarding stories of conspiracies over nuanced explanations. Videos and posts about the Black Pope can go viral precisely because they shock, anger, or frighten audiences. As these stories spread, they attract communities that reinforce each other's beliefs, creating echo chambers where doubt or skepticism is unwelcome. Another psychological dynamic is the appeal of secret knowledge. People are drawn to the idea of knowing what others do not, of possessing hidden truths that set them apart. Myths like the Black Pope promise initiates a glimpse behind the curtain, a chance to feel superior to those who remain ignorant. This feeling can be intoxicating, strengthening commitment to the legend even when evidence contradicts it. Understanding these psychological forces does not mean ridiculing those who believe in conspiracies. They are natural responses to uncertainty, complexity, and fear. Recognizing them helps us develop empathy and better strategies for addressing misinformation. When people believe in legends like the Black Pope, it often reflects a desire for meaning in a confusing world, rather than malice or ignorance. Yet myths can have real consequences. The Black Pope legend has been used to justify persecution, violence, and discrimination. Anti-Catholic laws, social divisions, and even wars have been fueled by fears of Jesuit plots. Modern conspiracy theories can similarly lead to distrust, polarization, and harm. By examining the psychology behind these stories, we can learn to challenge them constructively, offering understanding and evidence rather than ridicule. As we come to the end of this journey through centuries of fear, rumor, and intrigue, we find ourselves standing at a crossroads of history and myth. The legend of the Black Pope has endured not because it reveals a hidden ruler of the world, but because it reflects our deepest fears and most enduring questions about power, faith, and the forces that shape our lives. By exploring the truth behind this myth, we not only unravel a fascinating chapter of the past, but also gain insight into ourselves and the way we understand the world. The story of the Black Pope reminds us that legends often grow from kernels of truth, twisted by suspicion and fueled by uncertainty. The Jesuits were indeed powerful within their sphere, educating generations, advising rulers, and spreading their faith across continents. They were disciplined, well-organized, and fiercely loyal to their mission. But the leap from spiritual leaders to secret emperors of Europe was made not by facts, but by fear, political rivalries, and the human tendency to imagine shadows where none exist. We have seen how political leaders used the myth to rally support or divert blame, how conspiracy theorists found in the Black Pope a symbol of their worst anxieties, and how cultural biases turned devotion and discipline into evidence of dark plots. We have also uncovered the reality of the Jesuits' work. The countless schools they founded, the scientific discoveries they made, and the lives they risked to serve people in distant lands. These achievements speak to a dedication to education, faith, and service, far removed from the image of a secret puppet master. The persistence of the Black Pope legend teaches us important lessons. First, it shows how easy it is for stories to take on a life of their own when repeated often enough, especially during times of conflict and change. Second, it reveals how conspiracy theories can become powerful tools for those who wish to manipulate fear for their own ends. Third, it reminds us of our responsibility to seek the truth, to question what we hear, and to look beyond simple explanations for the complexities of history. Even today, the myth of the Black Pope continues to surface in discussions of world events, religious debates, and fringe theories. In an age of instant communication and global crises, stories like this can spread faster than ever, reaching millions within hours. This reality makes understanding the origins and evolution of the Black Pope legend more important than ever before. By recognizing how such myths form and why they endure, we become better equipped to challenge falsehoods and build societies based on knowledge and trust rather than suspicion. Yet there is also value in the legend itself. It reminds us that history is not only about dates and documents, but also about the stories we tell and the meanings we attach to them. Legends like the Black Pope show how fear and fascination can shape collective memory, influencing politics, culture, and even personal beliefs. By studying these stories, we gain a deeper understanding of how our minds work, how societies change, and how narratives can bind us together or tear us apart. As we close this exploration, we invite you to reflect on what you have learned. Do you believe the Black Pope was ever a real threat to the world? Or was he a phantom born from misunderstanding and fear? How do stories like this shape your view of power, faith, and the forces that move history? What other myths might still influence the way we see our world today? We encourage you to share your thoughts in the comments, to discuss these questions with others, and to continue seeking out the hidden corners of history where truth and legend meet. If you found this journey enlightening, subscribe to our channel so you never miss an opportunity to explore the mysteries and untold stories that shaped our past. Thank you for joining us on this exploration of one of history's most enduring legends. May this story inspire you to question, to learn, and to seek the truth, no matter how deep the shadows or how tangled the myths that stand in your way.